Now, turning to our program, I'm pleased to welcome Milwaukee Press Club President, Mary Ann Lazarski. Mary Ann will introduce our panelists and speaker. Mary Ann.
Thank you, Mr. President. I always thought Tom and Dave were hip and cool, so congrats on the podcast and good luck. Good afternoon. It's great to see a full house here today for Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, who we will hear from in just a minute. Again, after County Executive answers questions from our journalists, you all will have a chance to ask questions using the microphone in the middle of the room. And now I'd like to introduce our panel. First of all, Aaron Maybin, Fox 6 News. Come on. Edgar Menendez from Neighborhood News Service. And Vanessa Swales from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And now just a little background on Executive Crowley. In May of 2020, David Crowley became the youngest county executive in the history of Milwaukee County and the first Black leader elected to serve in the role. In 2024, County Executive Crowley was reelected to a second term with 85% of the vote. David Crowley is focusing Milwaukee County on a vision of achieving racial equity and by doing so, becoming the healthiest county in Wisconsin. As a lifelong Milwaukee resident, he recognizes that Milwaukee County is truly a tale of two communities. He has lived the pain and struggle that many of our neighbors and neighborhoods face today. And he knows the joy of bringing people together to conquer those challenges. The fundamental tenet of Executive Crowley's administration is to build bridges that bring people together, deliver prosperity for working families, and foster a safer, stronger, and healthier Milwaukee County. He attended Bayview High School, and I found something interesting out. He's currently finishing up his degree at UW Milwaukee, and he tells me he's graduating December 15th. So a round of applause. He says he's been doing that full time and running the county. I said, "You're amazing." He says, "No, my wife is amazing." So I'll take that. He's amazing too. Anyway, he lives in Milwaukee with his wife, Erica, and their 3 young daughters. So please welcome David Crowley.
Good afternoon. Y'all feeling all right? Y'all not going to fall asleep on me because of the food, are you? Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I want to say also thank you to the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. It's so glad to see you all here today. The Milwaukee Press Club for allowing me the opportunity to address you all again and just about all the work that we're doing to really move Milwaukee County forward. And yes, I would not be able to do all the work without my wife. And so as I always joke, she is my better 3/4. But I'm going to get right into it. And so just really quickly, I'm going to have some slides up. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but please follow through. And there's also a few handouts, 2 handouts at your table. And we want you to look at those handouts as I continue to speak about what we're doing. So I'm going to go right into this. And so just last week, I signed my 2025 budget into law. Now, this budget continues the county's track record of sound, responsible budgeting while making sure we're continuing to keep in mind the investments that we need to provide the level of service that residents and families expect throughout Milwaukee County. Now, when I first took office in 2020, we worked to solve long-standing problems. We wanted to preserve the services that we had. But we also knew that we would have to make some tough choices to make sure that Milwaukee County was on a path for financial sustainability. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that challenges remain. But Milwaukee County, we have made some significant progress in realizing our goal. We've addressed legacy pension and fiscal issues, securing new revenues through Wisconsin's Act 12. And we also implemented new methods to deliver services. Many of us remember the days of budget cuts. We remember the service reduction. We remember hiring freezes. But that is not happening this year because that is not our current reality today. Overall, Milwaukee County's financial outlook remains far better now than in previous years. And as a result, my 2025 budget keeps the county's property tax levy below 2020 levels. My budget also, again, avoids any major cuts to services, strives to build on the progress that we've made, and is going to continue that track record of fiscal responsibility. Now, I credit our current financial situation to the progress that we have built together. I didn't do this on my own. We've done this together. We've done this with effective partnerships that we have created, not just here locally, but also across the entire state of Wisconsin, but also due to putting innovative policies into place. And so we have secured every tool currently available to address our fiscal challenges, literally every tool. And we've reduced our physical footprint by nearly 3 million square feet across the entire county. We've implemented public-private partnerships in the largest service areas to reduce our costs, to enhance our efficiencies, improve outcomes, and so we can start saving much more of our taxpayer dollars to keep in your pocket. But we all must recognize that we are not out of the woods yet. And while we have these tools, we still have challenges that remain. So we know that structural budget deficits, they have returned, and they will be back again, quite frankly, in the near future. And we know that the cost of state mandated services, they are accelerating much faster than our rate to be able to pay for. And I've spoken about the additional spending that is required related to our state mandated public safety efforts and our criminal justice services. And this does include our sheriff's office. And so in this budget, we are recommending additional tax levy support across the public safety continuum. And this is going to help address our rising overtime costs, enhance the recruitment and retention as it relates to the public safety continuum, while making sure that we can maintain our staffing in both the courts and within our judicial facilities. Unfortunately, the increase in expenses for most of these functions, they've been solely funded by our local taxpayers right here within Milwaukee County. And it is a priority of my administration to address this, working with folks like Governor Tony Evers, working with the state legislature in this next upcoming budget. Because to be clear, state law requires Milwaukee County to carry out these mandated services. And to put it simple, we can't negotiate it. This is what's in state law. This is what's in our Constitution. And that's why we need everyone, not only here, but within Milwaukee County, to understand the financial obligations as well as the fiscal limitations that Milwaukee County is currently facing. And while I recognize the importance, I want to make sure I'm doing this right. I'm not used to doing clickers. And while I recognize the importance of these services that we deliver on behalf of the state, I would prefer, quite honestly, I think those in this room would prefer to use those dollars for our local priorities. Things like affordable housing, like our Milwaukee County parks, like public transit, like safer streets, like mental health. We want to be able to invest in those. But however, as a partner to the state of Wisconsin, Milwaukee County must fulfill its responsibilities and our legal obligations. And that's why we must identify cost-saving measures and innovative funding sources to support these state-mandated services, including through collaborations with both our state and federal partners. And my administration is working to do just that, without losing sight of our shared priorities. And so the bottom line is that partnerships and collaborations, they are the way forward. They are the way forward. Not only are they good to have, they are essential when it comes to our progress right here within our own community. And so now more than ever, we are committed to advancing our vision of achieving racial equity and becoming the healthiest county in the state of Wisconsin. The Rotary Club recently heard from Jim Matthew from our housing team, and you've all heard how we consider housing as a matter of public health and how housing is a huge component and critical to the social determinants of health. It's one of the reasons why my administration, we have been funding and have funded the largest number of affordable housing projects in Milwaukee County's history. Since taking office, we have delivered over $35 million in funding and gap financing for affordable housing projects all across Milwaukee County. And that's not just within the city of Milwaukee, that's across the entire county, particularly about 7 different suburban communities within Milwaukee. And just yesterday, I had the opportunity to announce $3 million for an affordable housing redevelopment project that is going on in South Milwaukee. Now, this work is going to continue, but as all work, is going to take us creating more partnerships, tackling the other issues that we're facing, like mental health, like the opioid crisis. And we're going to continue to advance, particularly the redesign of our behavioral health systems to provide better community-based services for those who are in need. We're also going to do everything that we can to combat the opioid epidemic through the deployment of the settlement dollars that are helping to provide our entire community with the resources and the support that they need in order to stay on that road to recovery. But also public transit. My administration, we've been investing funding into the Milwaukee County transit system in recent budgets because we know how critical it is to maintain our current service levels. We need to replace our aging bus fleet and continue our paratransit services while ensuring that transit security remains present throughout the Milwaukee County transit system's network. We want to make sure that people are safe. But federal funds for transit, they're not going to last forever. After transit-specific ARPA funds are spent down by 2027, MCTS will be addressing another fiscal cliff. And I'm eager to work with our partners to advocate for transportation funding so we can continue to provide and expand public transit for those who need it, not only today, but who may need it in the future. And as many of you heard, we have a lot of needs. Milwaukee County has about a capital backlog that's about $1 billion. So we have numerous capital needs, but our backlog of projects, again, totals about $1 billion. And the key project that we want to be able to reinvest in is our courthouse complex, which also you've probably recently heard about the incoming Milwaukee County District Attorney, Kent Laverne. I see him in the back. I know that he would love to see this happening, as well as many other folks across the entire public safety continuum. And so if you've ever been inside the current public safety building, you would know that, one, it's physically and literally crumbling. It is dysfunctional, and it poses a significant risk, not just to community safety, but to community justice in making sure that we can deliver justice for those who need it. But nonpartisan partners have also pointed out, like the Wisconsin Policy Forum, they've recommended that not only we remove this building, but that we replace the current public safety building, particularly with a new county courthouse complex. It is cheaper for us to tear down the current building and rebuild a new one than trying to renovate what is currently there. While any significant work on our facilities will be a multi-year process, we know that it's essential making sure that we have a robust community engagement process because we need your input. In my 2025 budget, it recommends $6 million to continue the planning and the designing of this particular project. And so I'm asking for all of you to support us, asking for your partnership in supporting us, because again, we're going to need that relationship with both our state and federal partners in order to get this done. And to give you a little bit of perspective on this, the more and more we put this off, the more expensive it becomes. Every 1 to 2 years, the cost of building this grows anywhere between $5 to $8 million a year because of inflation, because of the cost of labor, and because of our supply chain. And so again, we need this new facility. This is going to help us fulfill our obligations to the state of Wisconsin. But that's also why I believe that the state of Wisconsin has a role to play. They have a role to play when it comes down to supporting development of this new Milwaukee County courthouse complex. Because if we don't continue investing in this multi-year process, again, these project costs are going to continue to grow. And we will not be able to fulfill our obligation when it comes down to the public safety continuum. And so in closing, because I want to make sure that we get an opportunity for folks to ask some questions, I know that the outlook may look grim, but I want folks to understand that the outcome has dramatically improved for Milwaukee County. Again, the fiscal challenges remain, but we have made great strides as far as where we are today. And so if the passage of Wisconsin Act 12 has taught us anything, It has really taught me, particularly and our team, that collaboration and partnerships, they can lead to meaningful success. They can help us secure the additional revenue and the resource that we need for Milwaukee County. But we can't just fight for Milwaukee County because the issues that are facing the county are not unique to Milwaukee. They may have a few more zeros on it because of the population, because of the density, because of our diversity. But every community across this state are facing similar issues as Milwaukee County. And so we know that our relationships, not only at the state level, but also within Washington, D.C., they've helped us produce some amazing things. And we want to continue to strengthen those partnerships. And while things may look different in our nation's capital, our approach will not be different. We're going to continue to build relationships to figure out, again, how to bring these resources back to Milwaukee. And while there are a lot of unknowns, and for some, it may be, frankly, some concerns as it relates to how we move forward, I truly believe that as long as we continue to work on these relationships, we'll be able to make the investments that we need to make. And so I want you to know that I'm committed to working with the governor, working with the legislature, working with the incoming Trump administration to deliver on behalf of Milwaukee County residents. And I'm ready to continue to build on some of these projects, foster some new partnerships, strengthen partnerships, but more importantly, deliver real results for our community. And I don't mean that just in tangible ways, because we need to make sure that physically and when we look at infrastructure, the things that we can point at, but we also need to make sure that we are rowing in the right direction, making sure that folks believe in Milwaukee County in the future of what we can be and who we should be. Because I believe together we can help find common ground. We can find common solutions. We can do the things that we need to do, but we need to start locking arms and really focusing on our entire community, not just one part, but our entire community. So thank you for this opportunity, for being able to tell you where we have come from, where we are going, what challenges remain. But I do want to put a call to say that when we talk about partnerships, we're not just talking about other local municipalities. We're not just talking about businesses here locally, but we're also talking about individuals like yourselves. Because as I say a lot of the time, not every role is for everybody, but there's always a role for somebody when it comes down to helping Milwaukee County gain the prosperity that we deserve. So thank you for this opportunity. And now we'll open up to our reporters for any questions.
County executive and soon-to-be college grad, thank you for your time this morning, not only speaking to this crowd, but also with journalists who cover this county every single day. I want to go back to your 2025 adopted budget. You mentioned avoiding those drastic cuts. So what core programs are prioritized, and how do you make sure that it really aligns with the residents' needs in this county?
Well, we started working on our first strategic plan when I first became county executive. We want to make sure that we're being intentional and including people to be a part of the decisions that we make. We want to bridge the gap in making sure that nobody falls through the cracks when it comes down to the services that people rely on. But more importantly, well, I wouldn't say more importantly, but equally important, we needed to put our money where our mouth is and start investing in equity. So one, when we talk about housing, we know that affordable housing is facing many different communities, not just across Milwaukee County, but across this entire state and across this entire country. And so we know that as long as we continue to make investments in affordable housing, not only do we open up access for many individuals, but we actually help to lower the cost because we're actually bringing on more housing options. Now, we're not just focusing on building projects to allow people to become renters at the same time. We're also investing in home ownership opportunities. Again, within that $35 million, we are building about 110, 120 homes in the King Park neighborhood in collaboration with Group and Habitat for Humanity. And we've been hearing this consistently, and so we know that this aligns with many of the issues that we have not only heard during the presidential election, but many of the issues that we have heard throughout my entire tenure being Milwaukee County executive. And so when we look at the opioid epidemic with the settlement dollars, when we take a look at what we've done with mental health and bringing those services from Wauwatosa and moving them into inner city Milwaukee, this created even greater access, right? When we looked at the data, because we want to look at the data to make sure that we are making informed decisions that's going to help us move the needle, 70% of the people that we were serving lived in or around the King Park neighborhood. So to move that closer lets us know that we are directly involved and directly impacting the needs of our entire community. But as long as we're making investments in health, we know that we're moving in the right direction. I want to be very clear. Health is not just the mental and the physical. We're looking at the totality, the holistic view of health, because housing is health, transportation is health, money in your pocket is health. And all those things contribute to having good mental and physical health at the same time.
Executive Crowley, you mentioned deferred maintenance and infrastructure projects like the county courthouse and the public safety building. But obviously there's many other projects, including parks, buildings. How close are we till we get to the point where these projects get too expensive and these properties can't be fixed? And also to the point where the public loses access to all the wonderful amenities the county has?
Well, when you talk about the assets that we have and what we would throw away, I think that's on a case-by-case basis. I think right now we have prided ourselves within my administration. We have picked up every can so far that we have kicked down the road. I will be your recyclable person because we want to pick up all of these cans. So for us, it's about taking an inventory. One, about when you look at that $1 billion in deferred maintenance, half of that is the public safety building. Half of that is the public safety building alone. And so if we can tackle that, one, that allows us to create even more operational efficiencies within our public safety continuum. When you think about how we transport individuals, and now we'll have a little bit more privacy for our lawyers who are there to where we can actually have justice being served and not slowed down. But I will tell you that we know that we still have a long way to go. And the reason why we continue to talk about these partnerships is that we can't do this alone. Now, I'll be the first to tell everybody I like my job, so I know I can't continue to raise your property taxes, right? And so we have to look at a diversity mix of how we're bringing in different revenues from both the state and federal level to make sure that we're making a dent when it comes down to the capital backlogs. But I will say, even in this budget, we've continued to put more money, particularly towards our Milwaukee County Parks Department. You're going to see more bodies actually when it comes down to the maintenance, but we are, again, trying to tackle as many of these capital projects as much as possible, because the more we delay this, the more expensive it becomes. And this is the reason why we have a big push at this moment, particularly when you look at the $3 billion surplus the state has, how we can get our hands on that to make a greater impact on the people that we serve in Milwaukee County.
County Exec, I'm going to ask you obviously a very soft question, but given the constraints of the recent budget and unexpected shortfall with the sales tax, do you think 4% was too small of an ask, and whether that will dictate what types of policies you'll advocate for at the state level this upcoming year?
So I think that we still have a long way to go. And I think that when it comes down to working with the legislature, we're still going to have a real conversation about what does shared revenue look like moving forward. And so for those who may not know, what we were able to do in the current formula of shared revenue, which is just a pot of money, it used to be about $900 million that was split between all local municipalities. We now take 20% of the total sales tax, and that is set aside for all local municipalities. And so that's about $1.4 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And so we need that partnership. I would say that 0.4% that we were able to get, quite frankly, I didn't know that we would be able to get that much. When you think about the negotiating and the hardballing that particularly Speaker Voss was giving us during those negotiating periods. But I will say that we know that we have to make certain decisions based off of what our financial outlook looks moving forward. And so at the end of the day, we have to prepare our community that tough decisions will have to be made. We've put $10 million, the last $10 million of our ARPA funds into the Milwaukee County transit system. So we know that we are facing a financial cliff. So we know that there's going to have to be some tough choices. But I will tell you, based off of the relationship that we have built at both the state and federal level, I'm hopeful. Some people would say I'm probably recklessly optimistic. But I believe that we'll be able to create these partnerships in order to bring the resources down because what's good for Milwaukee County, quite frankly, is good for the entire state of Wisconsin. And if we can lift up the entire county, in turn, we lift up the entire state. So hopefully we can strengthen that partnerships and bring more resources.
And just sort of building off that, what are your long-term goals for Milwaukee County's financial health, and how do you envision achieving that?
Well, long term is we'll be able to make investments. You know, right now, state mandates take up 80% of our total budget. I'm gonna repeat that. State mandates take up 80%. Let me look at my staff, make sure that's right. 80% of our total budget. And so I would like to see the state actually step up, right? Because I'll give you a prime example of that. Milwaukee County, our sheriff's office, is the only sheriff's office that is responsible for patrolling our streets, our highways, right? And that costs us about $32 million every 2 years. Does anybody know how much we get from the state in order to help supplement that? $1 million a year. Just $1 million a year, right? I'll give you another prime example. We have to be able to staff our court systems. And there's a Supreme Court rule that you have to have a certain amount of individuals within those courtrooms. And so in order to have all of our bailiffs work in the courtroom, that's 114 sheriff deputies. That's equivalent to the total sheriff's office within Rock County, right? And that's when those costs grow, and they have grown $20 to $30 million over the years, Milwaukee County picks up 100% of those costs. But these are state mandated programs. So it is my goal that we continue to work with the state, not just for Milwaukee County, but for all municipalities, to make sure that the state is actually picking up their fair share. So the folks that we represent, that spend their hard-earned property tax dollars into programs and services like Milwaukee County, can actually benefit from those programs and services. Because right now, we are paying so much money towards the state services that is eating up our ability to focus on our local priorities. So the more and more we can get them to pay their fair share, the more we'll free up our dollars to be able to invest back in our neighborhoods. But long term is really about becoming the healthiest county, having enough housing stock, having a solid transportation system. I want Milwaukee County to be the region of choice. And so I will tell you, I had the opportunity when we had the RNC, I was leaving Florida to come back to Milwaukee that Sunday. Now, interesting enough, the first thought that came to my mind is, why are all these people leaving Florida in the summertime to come to Milwaukee? But I realized it was the RNC. But when we landed, hearing the commentary of the people, just seeing the lake, seeing our skyline, seeing our beach, it let me know that when people come to Milwaukee for the first time, we have the absolute opportunity to awe them, because we are a great place to work, play, and live. And I want to grow this to be the region of choice. So you can leave the West Coast, you can leave the East Coast, you can leave the Gulf Coast, and come to the fresh coast right here in Milwaukee.
Executive Crowley, you mentioned the opioid epidemic and also the opioid settlement funds. And while there have been some strides, the number of drug overdose deaths in the county is down this year compared to last year. Deaths among African Americans has been rising for several years, to the point where they make up the largest group in the county based on population. What is your office doing to reach Black communities with prevention messages and also just help save more lives in general?
Absolutely. So this is a issue that's near and dear to me. And, you know, I've talked about it before, but growing up as a kid, both my mother and my father suffered from both drug addiction as well as mental health issues. So making sure that we can continue to make these investments is a huge priority for me. And let's be very clear, when we're talking about investing in kicking this opioid crisis to the curb, it's not going to get fixed overnight. It's not going to get fixed in a year. This is going to take time in order to make these investments. And so we've been partnering and working with groups already on the ground who've been doing this work without funding. And we have given about $3 million in grant funds to work with those individuals, whether we're talking prevention, whether we're talking intervention, but also providing resources. We now have 18 different harm reduction vending machines out throughout Milwaukee County. And in these vending machines, you can find naloxone strips, you can find fentanyl testing strips, you can find gun locks. And it's very unique what we have here in Milwaukee County because it's not just focused on the opioid crisis, but it's focused on the broad range when it comes down to public safety, because opioid isn't the only thing killing people. Guns are also killing people. So making sure that people have access to those things free of charge through those opioid vending machines are going to be key moving forward. But let's face it, the county can't do this work on its own. And honestly, this is another piece that we need help on, because we need to kick this. There's a stigma on people getting help. When we talk about putting these harm reduction vending machines, people was wondering, well, I don't want that mess. We don't want this quote unquote mess either, but the only way to get this mess, to kick this habit, is by making sure that people can continue to be on the road to recovery. Because the road to recovery isn't just kicking that habit for the week. The road to recovery lasts a lifetime for many individuals. So we need to make sure that these tools, these resources are peppered all across Milwaukee County to make sure that people are getting their help. But particularly, there have been numerous of partnerships created on the north side within the city of Milwaukee. Just recently, we created a partnership with Serenity Inns that's off of Brown Street on the north side of the city of Milwaukee. We've seen high-profile individuals like Ben Baker and his recovery center as well. And we want to continue to create those partnerships. But also, how do we get into the grassroots level, talking to family, talking to friends? Because when I think about my parents, they had to have somebody who loved them and had to work with them every single day in order to help them kick that habit. And so it's going to take partnerships. But more importantly, it's going to take some love, because that's what many of these individuals need in order to kick this habit. But you're going to continuously see more opioid settlement funding dollars. And as long as we can bring more tax levy dollars to help tackle this issue, that's what we're going to do.
Given WellPath's recent bankruptcy filing, how confident are you in its ability to administer care for the people incarcerated at the jail and the CRC, and what contingency plans do you have?
So right now, the bankruptcy related to them has no effect on what is happening right here within our CRC, our Community Reintegration Center, as well as our jail. And so at this moment, we're going to continue to work in making sure that we can provide those medical services for all of those residents in our care. But right now, there is not going to be a disruption or no disruption on the horizon at this moment.
Partnerships, that's a word I keep hearing today. I can tell that you're really invested in those community partners, but we're going to have a new administration coming in January on the federal level, with the Trump administration coming in. So I guess, have you made contact with the Trump administration yet? And how do you think that that's going to impact people who live in Milwaukee County?
So no, because we don't know who's all a part of this administration quite yet. But when it comes down to the Trump administration, I'm going to go back to a quote that I live by, which is, no one cares what you know until they know how much you care. So we're going to build a relationship with the Trump administration, just like we'll build a relationship with any other elected official right here within the state of Wisconsin. And I do believe that we'll find some inroads to be able to make some investments right here in our own backyard. You know, our President-elect Trump has talked about wanting to focus on manufacturing, bringing manufacturing back to the states. Well, Wisconsin, we're a manufacturing state. And so if there are ways that we'll be able to create a partnership, bring those jobs back to Milwaukee, back to the state of Wisconsin, while also increasing wages, I want to be able to tackle issues just like that. But also, if I'm not mistaken, Sean Duffy just got nominated as the Secretary of Transportation, and he's a Wisconsin guy. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to develop even greater relationships and bring some of that road money back to Milwaukee and Wisconsin.
Years ago, SDC was among the county was among the groups that helped establish SDC as an intergovernmental institution. And it's also one of the groups that was funding some of its work. Mm-hmm. Yet, none of those organizations, the state, city, a lot of organizations weren't monitoring SDC closely enough to kind of foresee the issues that resulted in its closing in April. How do we avoid having another situation like SDC? And also, what has the county done to fill the void of the programs that closed with SDC?
So when it comes down to SDC, I would say it's an unfortunate situation to see what has happened. You're talking to a kid who actually benefited from many of the programs and services of the Social Development Commission since I was a kid. But I will tell you that we want to continue working with the Social Development Commission. But I also know that there are some conversations happening at both the state and federal level to figure out how we move forward. But many of those programs and services, we've seen organizations actually pick them up and actually to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. To this day, my office, we have not received any calls related to constituent calls to say that there have been any issues related to service providing since the closing of SDC, which is a good thing at this moment. But we also know that as a CAP agency, there are dollars that are probably still on the table at the state and federal level that we haven't been able to take advantage of since they aren't open. And right now, I'm just waiting to see what happens at both the state and federal level about how we move forward. But the key is just making sure that these programs and services continue, and we know that those organizations have been doing that thus far.
You and Mayor Johnson have been friends for a long time. Grew up in politics together. You've built a city-county relationship. You've both repeatedly been floated as potential gubernatorial candidates should Governor Evers not seek re-election. How do you feel about that and potentially running against your friend?
I should have been prepared for that one. So always, when getting that question, I understand. I always think it's an unfair question, right? I have a great relationship with Governor Evers, great relationship with folks like Tammy Baldwin and Congresswoman Gwen Moore. So when we get those questions, I always think to myself, like, I'm not trying to take their jobs because they've been great friends to me. They've been great mentors and great role models, but also bringing resources back to Milwaukee County. If that opportunity presented itself to be able to run for a higher office like governorship, I would absolutely take that into consideration. First and foremost, talking to my better three-quarters, my wife, to make sure I get her blessing. But when it comes down to me and the mayor being able to figure that out, I think it's just us having a conversation. You know, we've been, friends for 20 plus years, both graduated from Bayview High School and have very similar tracks when it comes down to how we got in government. But I just think that that's just a conversation that we'll just have to sit down and make. But at this moment, I'm all in for Tony Evers.
Well, thank you, and it's probably a good time just to shift our questions over to the audience, but thank you, County Exec, and Aaron, and Edgar, and Vanessa. It's been a good conversation so far, and as people come up here, I just want to have a quick reminder that we're looking for short questions, and I'm going to turn this over to Josh.
Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful talk here. Thinking outside the box, given the fact that we have one of the largest wooden structures of a building, have you thought about 3D printing the courthouse?
3D printing the courthouse.
Just outside the box. Just thinking outside the box.
So my dad's the electrician. So no, I don't think that we have thought about 3D printing the courthouse, but I will tell you that there has been some robust discussions. Again, we're currently in the design and planning phase right now, so it's going to be very interesting to see what we receive back moving forward. But I'm not sure if we thought about 3D printing because I'm not sure how. I don't know anything about construction per se, but is that strong enough to hold an elevator?
You mentioned our budget, $1.4 billion in Milwaukee County. 80% is mandated services, which leaves, it's about $1.12 billion, leaving only $280 million for everything else. Can you talk a little, you showed the county sheriff office and that cost. Talk broadly about what are all those services that are mandated, just general buckets, and two, what can we do to be supportive as the business community in Milwaukee to help seek additional partnerships?
Absolutely. So those mandated services is, quite frankly, the public safety continuum. So when you think about bailiffs in the courtrooms, when you think about our courts, so majority of our court staffs, like judges and stuff like that, those are state employees. But many of the folks who support those judges are county employees. Case in point is like, for example, when you think about a public defender who's on staff, that is paid for by the state in a sense, right? But if there's no public defender available and somebody needs to have representation and a judge says you're going to get a court-appointed lawyer, the county pays for that, right? And the county pays to that to the tune of about $100 an hour, $125 an hour. So when we think about sheriff's office, we think about our courts, community reintegration center as a state mandate. We're the only county that is charged with having a community reintegration center. For those who don't know, that is the formal House of Corrections. But pretty much it is everything almost public safety that we are state mandated to deliver. And so when we think about our jails, again, our courthouse, I mean, anything public safety, quite frankly. And to put that in perspective, across the entire state, I had some conversations with a few county executives and a few county administrators, and across the entire state, counties are paying about $252 million of their own money to supplement state mandated services. So businesses can help out by asking the state to step up. Because when it comes down to services that we can directly invest in locally, for example, when we talk about housing, when we talk about transportation, things that improve the quality of living for your clients, for your residents, that doesn't come from the state per se. It comes from us locally. So how do we utilize state dollars to free up local resources to invest in our local priorities?
Thank you very much. Very good comments. You hit all the hot points. I think Mr. Maybin had the biggest question. How do you deal with the Trump administration and vice versa? Every president has a favorite city of the opposite party that the president works with to show a bipartisan approach. What are your thoughts of using the RNC potential, and Mr. Priebus and others, to establish a region of choice relationship with the incoming administration, realizing that it's going to be a give and take, and Mr. Trump might have different ideas than you?
Well, it's always about building coalitions. And I know that if we're going to work with this Trump administration or any administration, it's not just about how we approach it as Milwaukee County, but what other partners do we need? And so we're going to be relying on our associations, our business community, as well as some of the individuals you named. I have a great relationship with Ranks, so to be able to bring him to the fold would be huge, right? Yes, we have the RNC. Now, I don't know what we are. We could be horrible or we could be his favorite city. But I'm going to use this as an opportunity to build that relationship. And so moving forward, the election is over. We know that politics could be a full contact sport. But now is the time to really make sure that we're investing in the people of Wisconsin and the state, as well as the city of Milwaukee. And so we're going to work with everybody and everybody. You know, I will tell you, even now, every time I'm in every time I'm in DC, there's no way I'm not visiting the White House administration in some capacity. And we're going to continue that trajectory. I'm also a board member for the National Association of Counties. I'm the chair of our large urban counties caucus. So I'm going to be bringing many voices to the Capitol, to the White House, to make sure that counties are not forgotten.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have a question. Homelessness is a very serious issue, not only here in Milwaukee, but across this country.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, do you have plans to address this problem in Milwaukee?
Great question. Yes, we do have plans, and to be honest with you, we have been addressing homelessness for many years within Milwaukee County. You know, I know a lot of focus has been on the parking rise and what we're doing, particularly with those individuals, and we are finding housing for those individuals. But what many people may not know is that Milwaukee County, for 2 years in a row, we had the lowest unsheltered homeless population in the entire country right here in our own community. We've been making investments in affordable housing, so we know we've been moving the needle, but we know we can't stop here. There are still issues affecting our homeless population, as well as those who are coming up the issue of affordability when it comes down to renting or owning their own home. But again, we need the state to kind of step up when it comes down to this. So it's about how do we work with WIDA? How do we work with the state legislature? Because affordable housing and workforce housing is needed now more than ever. And there are many suburban communities within Milwaukee County and across this entire state that are asking themselves how to have this conversation. Because if they don't bring in more density and build more housing stock, they're going to be forced in many places across this entire state to actually raise property taxes to a level that's going to be unsustainable in order to maintain the services and the quality of life that those residents deserve. And so we're going to have to partner with the state and the federal level. But because of our housing first and because of our no wrong door model, we're not only getting individuals into homes, we're also making sure to wrap around all the other services that they need. And so if a veteran walks into our veterans division and needs help, it's not to say that just because he's a veteran, that person is a veteran, they don't need housing, they don't need mental health, they don't need senior services or older adult services. We have to start wrapping around these services because the more and more we can help individuals become more sustainable, the more we're going to be spending less money on the back end when it comes down to county investments and really making sure we do these upstream investments, resulting in becoming the healthiest county.
How you doing, Mr. Crowley?
I'm well. Every day's a good day.
Always, always. You talked about your journey to inspire the state to view Milwaukee in the way that you do. Can you talk more about that journey and the direction in which you want to lead those conversations? And how can Rotary help you?
Absolutely. So, I'm lucky that started off as a staffer in the state legislature for 4 years in the state senate, was elected also as a state representative. So it gave me a few laps around the track before I actually got started in this race. And I will tell you that it's going to take relationships. And, I remember when I first became county executive and Mayor Johnson was still common council president, I reached out to him and said, I need you to take a trip with me. And you know what we did? We took a trip to Rhineland. And yes, it's nice to be able to see the whole dag, but we wanted to build relationships with people that we normally wouldn't be able to build relationships with. And I remember going to that finance committee hearing, talking about the issues of Milwaukee County, and I got a response that I wasn't expecting. I got a standing ovation. And we got a standing ovation because the issues that we spoke to wasn't, if you didn't know I was from Milwaukee, I would have been talking about every community across the state. And so this is really about building relationships. We have to step outside of our geographical comfort zone in southeastern Wisconsin, in Milwaukee County, and go to different places that we wouldn't usually go. And I have the opportunity to do that. I'm lucky I've had a father who not only born and raised here in the city, but he introduced me to hunting. And so as an inner city African-American going hunting, you can imagine how many people look at me crazy like, oh, right? But building that relationship, now we have a certain level of trust. And so now when I can ask about somebody's family, so it's about somebody's business, it makes those policy conversations just a little bit more easy. And that's what we have to do. We have to build solid relationships with communities across Milwaukee, but across the entire state if we're going to move forward. We can always talk about Milwaukee being the economic engine of the state. But let's be mindful that it's kind of difficult to do that without feeling like you're beating on your chest. But if we're going to be the economic engine of the state, we need to let all of our partners know that we do it with them. We may be the engine, but who's the car seat? Who's the tires? Who's the gas? Who's the oil? And all of our partners across the state, they all contribute to us moving forward, and we have to build those relationships so people not only believe that, but they see it based off of the relationships that they are creating themselves.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Quick clarification with the commentary that the sales tax is not covering as much as expected. What happened on that? Why is it falling short from where the expectations were?
Are you still spending money? Trying to. All right. Thank you. So the sales tax, we're falling short because people weren't spending as much money. That's frankly what it was. But also, we didn't collect as much of a sales tax because inflation had actually cooled off. And so when inflation is high and we're spending money, that means we're bringing in a larger part of our sales tax. But we did not see the same amount of spending right here within Milwaukee County, so that sales tax failed. But I want to be very clear that the sales tax does not come into Milwaukee County to support programs and services. The sales tax comes into Milwaukee County to pay down our pension obligations directly, right? And what that allowed was, just to put this in perspective, prior to Act 12, we collect about $300 million of local property tax levy. $100 million of that 300 went to the pension system alone. So a third of our property taxes was being dumped into that. And we were having to continue to spend more because we're kind of upside down. We have more people collecting a pension than paying into it, which means that we didn't have a dedicated funding source going into that pension system. And so now that we have the sales tax, it is eating up at the pension obligation bonds that we have, as well as the dollars that we have to invest. But it freed up $80 million. And so that $80 million we pulled out, and that goes towards programs and services. And so this past year, we've seen a shortfall of close to about $5 to $6 million in sales taxes. It hurt, but it didn't stop us from being able to close the gap and continue to deliver the services that you rely on.
I think it's probably a good time to wrap up. So thank you, all of you, county exec, and to our panelists.
Thank you.
And a reminder that we have a great audience here today, and we hope to have some really good competition for Post of the Week and see some really good posts coming out of our program today. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to President Saab.